today's big game breakdown here for NBA action. Only a couple of games. I'm going to look to the one that's being played here in the States. Big game between Milwaukee and Indiana. Bucks off of a win last night. Pacers off of a win last night. Back to back with travel for the Bucks. Back to back stay at home for the Pacers. Really mirror-like teams here. Two really high-scoring offensive squads. Defense, a little bit to be desired on each side. And it's going to be the first game of a road trip for Milwaukee, which generally I like to play on teams in their first of a road trip because you come in a little bit more focused in the first game. It's the tail end of road trips where things get to be a little old and long. I think here, though, for Milwaukee, if Giannis had played a full game last night, I probably would have been even stronger on Indiana than I am. Giannis obviously double technical last night, gets thrown out of the game, only plays 21 minutes, which means he's likely good to go and fresh here for his typical minutes here against Indiana. However, if you change the names on the front of the jerseys here, you might think Indiana's the better team. You go up and down what's going on so far this season and look at the amount of scoring threats that Indiana has. They exceed what Milwaukee has at this point in time. And honestly, even though Indiana's not a great defensive club, they're probably better at this stage than Milwaukee. Milwaukee's now given up 48.5% field goal percentage to their opponents in every game except for one. Indiana, not much better, but slightly better in that regard. Both teams shooting the ball well. I think the most important thing here is a quote from Rick Carlisle on his Indiana Pacers discussing tonight's game. And he said, where we're at right now, games like this have to become a mindset. And he was kind of attributing his bench play last night, guys like Aaron Nesmith, that have come to that in a reserve role have been very, very good for Indiana. I don't know that the Bucks bench is as deep. I don't know that the Bucks have a true height advantage the way they usually do over opponents. I certainly don't think they have a backcourt advantage here. And it was brought up on yesterday's NBA tip-off, the lack of perimeter defense presented by the Milwaukee Bucks now that they've swapped out Drew Holiday for Damian Lillard. Again, last night, Cade Cunningham had 33 points. University of Houston Cougars star Marcus Sasser had 26 last night. The guards have dominated Milwaukee's backcourt from an offensive perspective, and Indiana has a host of guards here. So I think we're going to see a high-scoring shootout. It's obviously indicated by the number here. The total is extremely high. But the Bucks, I don't know that they deserve to be favored on the road at this point in time, and I think Indiana might be the more focused team. Again, if Giannis had played a full game yesterday, I'd be even stronger. But I'm going to play Indiana here, plus the 3 for the show. That'll be my best bet. I just feel like the quote from Carlisle, the amount of depth that they have, 1 through 9 at this point in time, is at least at this current time, it's better than what Milwaukee's showing us. So give me Indiana plus the 3 in what should be a high-scoring affair.
I'm going to take a look at the Mexico City game tonight. It doesn't say it in the WagerTalk line service that this game will not be played in Orlando, but Orlando will be treated as the home team here. It'll be interesting how this works out because this is the first time Atlanta has been to Mexico City, and it's the 4th time Orlando has been. I would think that's an advantage for Orlando here, even though the line opened 2.5, 3 for Atlanta has been jumped up to 3.5. Mostly around the board here. But I think Orlando, being there before and knowing this area, has a little bit of an advantage here. The Hawks are a team coming into the season. They wanted to really make a differential this year in moving the basketball, trying to get Trae Young from staying away from being his ball-hogging self that he's done in the past. Now, he's a great player, but when the ball gets in his hands, a lot of times it stays there. But they've had a really good ball movement. In fact, when you take a look at last year compared to this year, they ranked 28th in assist percentage last year. They're currently 11th. Pace, last year they ranked 19th. They're currently 2nd. Perimeter shooting, 28% last year, 3 points attempts a game, 28th. Now they're 13th. So they're getting much better ball movement here. And that's something that we can take a look at here when they're playing in Mexico City. And I talked to Rob a little bit before we taped today, and I wondered about, because of the altitude, 7,350 feet above sea level here, which is even much more higher than it is in Denver and Utah. I wonder how that will have an effect on these teams. As I mentioned, Orlando has been there before, so they're probably more accustomed to it, even though it's something that I think is going to affect everybody on the court. But I think what we're going to see is a fast pace here, because it is going to be played in a city where the United States is trying to get to the point where Mexico City will be part of the NBA. So they're trying to make a big offensive showing here. The line opened 233 and is dropped down to 231.5. I think that altitude is going to have an effect here. As good as the Atlanta Hawks have moved the ball so far this season, in Orlando having that ability to be here before and knowing how it plays out, I'm looking for this game to go a little bit under the total. Once again, it opened 233 down to 231.5. I think that's going to have a difference maker here, and I'm going to play that under the 231.5. But it should be a really good ball game from two teams. The upsides for these teams are looking up, especially at Atlanta. I really like the way Atlanta's playing, and this is a team that deserves to have more of a team-oriented play, and I think Trey Lance will become a better player because of that. So give me the under between Atlanta and Orlando in Mexico City.
Let's look at some player props for tonight. There's only 2 games on the board in the NBA, but there are some good games on the board. I'm going to look at some player props for you in the late game in Mexico City. Going to stay away from that first game, Pacers-Bucks. Both played last night. Should be a high-scoring game. Definitely wouldn't talk you off any over player props in that game with a total of 241.5. But you do worry a little bit about load management with both teams playing the night before. But both teams will be fully rested in the late game at 9:30 Eastern, Atlanta, Orlando. And of course, this game is in Mexico City, which means it is a spotlight game for the NBA. And whenever it's a spotlight game, I'm looking for a reason to play the Stars over their point totals. And the biggest stars in this game, Trae Young, of course, for the Atlanta Hawks, and Paolo Banchero for the Magic. And I think both are priced at a very reasonable number tonight. Let's first look at Trae Young. His total points is 22.5. I think he gets over there. This is a guy that's averaging on the season right around 21.5, but he is not shooting well from three-point range, just 27% from three. In fact, he's made only 1 3-pointer in 3 of his last 4 games, and he's still gotten to 22 points or more in every one of those 4 games. If he shoots anywhere near his norm going forward, he's going to have more points. He was only 5 for 18 from the field against the Thunder on Monday and still got to 22 points. Yes, there's thin air and altitude. There could be a little bit of fatigue in the second half, but I think Trae Young gets over 22.5. And the one I like the best, if you're going to play a player prop in this Mexico game, is Banchero over 21.5. He's priced a point lower, but I think he might actually have the biggest game of anybody on the court. This is a guy that's on the season, yes, averaging just 18 points a game, but it's misleading. He's played extremely better here over the past couple of weeks. In fact, he's had 22, 25, and 30 in his last 3 outings. And this is someone who goes off in big games ever since he was at Duke. I still remember that Duke Gonzaga game after Thanksgiving a few years ago against Chet Holmgren, and Banchero dominated. I look for him to be the star in the court tonight. I think the best prop on the board for Thursday is Banchero over 21.5 points as he puts on a spotlight game tonight in Mexico City. And don't forget, if you want my official best bets, they're available each and every day at WagerTalk.com. Get 30 days right now and an instant $50 discount with promo code ALL30. Check out my strong best bets, football and basketball. Steve Merril, WagerTalk.com.